Hello, hello. It's Dr. Stephanie. And I want to talk a little bit about not just rituals of rest as being something that is beneficial to ourselves, but I want to talk about rest as resistance. I don't know if you guys remember that book that came out a few years ago, and I was really intrigued by it. And I'm just going to tell you the author. Tricia Hersey is the author. So if you haven't checked it out, you might want to check that book out. But from the perspective of African American people, she talks about rest being an act of resistance. And I love that. It reminds me of what Audre Lorde said as well. But rest can be a form of resistance, resistance to the capitalism, the oppression that we often experience in this society. Sometimes I feel like all of the things, the internet and the information and the technology and the social media and just the whip fast pace that life is sort of served to us as serves as a distraction, right? It keeps us distracted from the things that are really important. And freedom is one of those things that's really important, and fighting for freedom is really important. But sometimes when you're so busy, you are distracted and you don't realize what things are really important. So, of course, our own personal freedoms, but freedoms of those people who are oppressed and may not have the power to free themselves is really important too. Changing the status quo in the places where it's unfair is really important. So resting to the point where we can see clearly and to the point where we have the energy to be able to fight the good fight, whether that's for ourselves, for our families, for our God, for the community, for the country, for the world. So rest is a form of resistance. One of my Duke classmates, Tama Bryant, who is the president of the American Psychological Association right now, posted something that was really, really meaningful and resonated with me. She posted a video about, she's a minister, so she was preaching about how, isn't it interesting that the very people who enslaved us as Africans and African Americans convinced us that we were lazy. And that to this day, we fight against that trope of being lazy by being busy, by working hard, by working ourselves to the point of exhaustion. So it's almost another form of being enslaved. So the physical chains, the physical bonds are gone, but that mental slavery of having to always be busy, to hustle, to rush, to get it done, to make it happen, and not just being restful, still exists for a lot of us. So the woman who wrote the book that Our Rest is Resistance Against Capitalism and Oppression, she considers herself the nap guru. So she prides herself on taking naps and encouraging other people to take naps. And I'm all for it. I'm someone who loves to take naps. And if I'm honest, I have not taken very many naps lately. So I need to up my game of resistance and take more naps. So definitely napping and taking rest in a literal form is one way that we can resist, but also not playing into the game of the hustle culture, not playing into the game of being constantly busy to the point of being distracted, not playing into the game that if we just sit and do nothing, that we're being lazy. You work hard 90% of the time. And so if 10% of the time you're sitting and doing nothing, that's not laziness. That's called rest. And our rest can be a form of resistance. So I would love for us to lean into this form of resistance just as much as we lean into our activism, just as much as we lean into our community service, just as much as we lean into creating and building and taking over the world in all those different ways. Let's not forget to lean into our power through rest as resistance. We can create the example for the generations coming after us, for our children, for the community, that it's okay to rest. We can cut those generational curses that mindset has been passed on from generation to generation, right? Because a lot of our ancestors who were slaves knew that they had to be constantly busy so that they wouldn't be punished, right? So that they wouldn't be called lazy. And sometimes that gets passed on. It can get passed on through our DNA. It could get passed on through habits, through conditioning. It's time to break that cycle. You deserve rest. I deserve rest. We deserve luxurious rest. We deserve to have our rest ritualized because our rest is sacred. Our work is our own. And when we rest, we can see things a lot more clearly. We can decide what things we need to do, what things can be delegated. We can share the load and build community by resting and let somebody else pick up the mantle. There's so much beauty and so much that we can create and discover through the resistance of rest. So tell me how you use rest as a form of resistance. I would love to hear it, and how we can all start to use rest as a form of resistance moving forward. Take care. Bye-bye for now.